and welcome to another edition of In the Barber Share with your host, me, Neville Bell. Thank you for being here tonight because we have a very, very special guest tonight, and we want to talk about something that's very important to a lot of us who've had sons play high school football. We were talking to former USC Trojan, New England Patriots, and Oakland Raiders, Los Angeles Raiders offensive tackle Pat Harlow. Also, he did coach over at Flagstaff, and now he's a coach down in J. Sierra. Pat, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Neville. Good to see you.
Hey, it's good to see you. You know, Pat, we go a long way back. I coached your son in baseball over at Anaheim Hills many years ago. That was some good old days back then.
Those were great days back then.
Also, congratulations to your son, Sean. I understand Sean is an offensive tackle now with the Arizona Cardinals. How is that going?
It's been great. You know, we finally got a shot. His 5th year in the league and got an opportunity to play. Has been doing a really good job. So we're extremely proud of him, not because he's playing football, because of all the grit and grind and belief in himself that has allowed him to stay motivated to take this opportunity and run with it.
Great. Well, Pat, we got you on the show tonight because we want to talk about something that's really dear to your heart. And I read some of your posts and I understand how you feel about it. I want to talk about high school football. The first question I have for you is, what would you tell parents whose son is playing high school football? What advice would you give the parents?
Honestly, my biggest advice would be just to back off. Let the coaches coach. And so many of us have grown up coaching our kids and think we really know the game. And these high school coaches, especially in Southern California, I think it's almost impossible to be coached poorly. There's so many great coaches at all the schools. So back off and just enjoy the process with your child. Now, that doesn't mean it's always going to go the way you want, nor it's not necessarily going to be what your child wants at that time. But it is a process that they need to go through, and it's a growth process. It's also, you know, this game can teach you so many things about yourself and be used later in life to be successful. You learn how to grind a little bit. I hate saying grind because it sounds horrible, but how to stick to a plan and follow that through and see where that leads you. So my biggest thing is, back off, let the coaches coach. You support your child as best you can. And, you know, I was at a camp many years ago speaking at a Larry Toner camp at Servite High School. And I stopped in and I spoke, and then my oldest was in his camp, and I started to say something to him while I was in it. And Mr. Toner comes over and he's like, who are you? And I was like, well, I just spoke. You kind of know who I am. Like, are you coaching or are you playing? Or are you spectating? I'm like, well, I'm a spectator. It's like, here's what you can do. You can ask your son after camp, did he have fun? And he try his hardest? And that let us coach him. And that really stuck with me, you know, and that was when my son was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. And it's very true, you know, just ask them, did they have fun? And did they try their hardest?
Wow. Let me ask you this. When would you think a kid should start playing football? The Pop Warner or high school? What's your suggestion?
I honestly would prefer most kids to not play until they got to high school. I lost that battle with my own sons because they were driving me nuts. We were at Peralta trying to sign up for soccer. He's like, I want to play football. I'm like, no, you're going to play soccer. And anyway, I ended up losing that battle. You know, I think that there's, you know, everybody's like, well, he's going to be behind. I'm like, yeah, they'll be a little bit behind as a freshman. But usually they come in to high school, they're fresh, they really love the game. I think we play too much football now. I think you need rest from it. I think to play other sports is great for your overall development as an athlete. But you come into high school, in that freshman year, you might be a little bit behind. That's okay. You'll probably be caught up by the end of your freshman year. And I just think that they don't have any bad habits. I've had a lot of success with kids that have never played or played very little youth football. And I've got guys that are, you know, playing, you know, a lot of guys have helped get to college, and quite a few guys now that have actually made it to the NFL, and they haven't started playing in, you know, maybe 7th, 8th grade, you know, at the earliest for me would be my suggestion. That doesn't mean you don't play flag football. I think there's a great thing in flag football. The game is a whole lot different now as far as being safe or safer than it was like when I grew up, or shoot, even when I was playing in the NFL. We didn't have concussions back then. We just had we got our bells rung, and so the games have gotten. We coach it different from a technique standpoint. We coach it different from the emphasis standpoint of a lot more technique instead of just trying to go and smash heads. But 7th, 8th grade, or even as a freshman would be my suggestion.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. I know Pop Warner football out here is huge, and I was just down in Louisiana, and I guess they got travel football clubs down there. So I don't know, but that was a very interesting answer you had, and I have to agree with you. My son started in 9th grade too, and I think he did pretty good. Now it's kind of funny. I was in Louisiana last weekend. I went to a state semifinal 5A championship football game between Arcadiana and Ponchatoula, and old USC coach Ed Olgeron showed up, and I had a chance to speak to him. And I said, Coach, I'm from California, and I'm here watching this game, and I want to know what's the difference between Louisiana football players and California. And you know what he told me?
I'd love to know.
He said California has more skilled players.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
I think that's probably true. And part of it, if you look at Texas, California, and Florida, and a lot of it's the weather, right? So they're playing football year round, or they're playing baseball outside, or they're playing whatever. And so, like, you go back to Wisconsin and it's snowing, in Michigan it's snowing. They're not out on the fields; they're in the weight rooms lifting, and they're getting big and they're wrestling and doing those things. But I think for skill development, we got so many people in California, and and I think that just with that amount of people, you're going to get you just got more variety, right, of athletes. But there's a ton of really good coaches out here that are coaching these kids. Shoot, 8, 9, 10 years old, they're going football all the time, and they're working on their craft constantly. And so that doesn't surprise me.
When I look at teams like the Minor Days of the world, and the Servites, and even Jay Sarah, they're traveling out of state to play football now. When I was playing football, it was town against town. I lived in a small town. It was this town versus this town, much like it was Friday night, and the towns were closed down. What's your take on these students traveling across country playing these high school football games?
Well, trust me, as a guy who's tried to schedule a lot of games when I was the head coach at Jay Sarah, it's really tough to find games where people won't play you, just because they just think, especially with the private schools, they think everybody thinks we cheat and do all these things, so they won't schedule us. And so we are basically forced to go out of state. I mean, 2 years ago, we played against a Utah team, we played against a Georgia team, we played against a New Jersey team. And that was just to fill our schedule. Trust me, we would love to stay in state, maybe travel once a year, because it's a great team building opportunity. And it's also, traveling out of state also is an experience that most high school kids will never get. And so getting on a plane, getting on buses, and doing all that, staying in the hotel for a few days, it's a great way to build camaraderie and team. But we would love to stay in state if it was possible.
Wow, that's interesting. While I was in Louisiana, everybody was asking me, what are they doing to the quarterback? What kind of football are they playing in California? Why are all the quarterbacks leaving California and going to schools in the SEC and the Big Ten? Even Ian Brooks is now with the Saints. I didn't know he was from Northern California also. Yeah. So what do you think about all these kids leaving California to go play elsewhere?
You know what? They're so talented. I mean, unfortunately, I had to play against all those guys, and the kid at Alabama. Bryce Young, JT Daniels, Josh Rosen. I mean, those are all guys in my league. I think they're going out of state right now because that's where the best players, the best teams are, the best chance to go compete for a national title. When I was in college, and I went to USC, we were a nationally ranked team. We were, I played against Oklahoma 1 versus 2, and right now the Pac-12 is just down. And as soon as, hopefully that Lincoln Riley hire at SC turns it around a little bit. Oregon can never quite get over the top. Chip Kelly, I think, is doing a good job, at UCLA, unfortunately for me. But right now I think it's because the Pac-12 is down. SEC is the place to be, and these guys are super, super competitive, and they're super skilled. I mean, Bryce is just amazing. JT was amazing. I mean, Josh Rosen was an absolute baller in high school, and so they're just going out there to compete against the best teams in the nation.
Would you say right now that California has the best high school footballs in the nation?
I would say overall, yeah. Again, we've got to play against some of the best teams from the other states. Modern Day, they went out and what they did. I think they played in Duncanville this year, and what Bosco's done when they've left. I mean, they're pretty darn good, And I think overall, when you go from a sheer number of really, really good teams, I think California is definitely at the top. Followed closely by, some of those Texas teams and some of those teams in Florida. But, I mean, IMG came, Modern Day's played IMG a couple times and they pretty much waxed them. So I would say it's probably the best football overall.
Right. I was trying to tell people about California football when I was down in Louisiana, but I think what I saw in the Louisiana championship game is more smash mouth. Yeah. I mean, out here is just like 7-on-7 during the game. These kids out here are throwing that football and they're catching it. These skilled kids out here are just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
We got a kid that made a catch that was on SportsCenter this year on the sideline, and it's one of the most amazing catches I've ever seen at any level. And I played against Jerry Rice, Andre Reed, and I mean I played against them all. And this was one of the most amazing catches by a high school kid I think I've ever seen. And he said, "Coach, that's the first time I've ever seen you show emotion on the sideline," because it was shocking.
Wow. Well, Pat, we're getting ready to close, but before we close, I got one question. I'm going to turn over to you. Where do you think high school football is going now? Where is it going?
I think it's going the wrong way, to be quite honest with you. I think, everybody's playing for scholarships instead of playing for their team, playing with their local kids, building that brotherhood that is really what you're going to really remember. Guys are chasing rings. They'd rather go sit on a bench at one of the big schools and get at that ring instead of playing at their local school, and maybe not having as much success from wins and losses. But I think there's so much more to the game than that that they're missing out on.
Wow, I agree. I totally agree. First thing I noticed when I got out here was that you can go to some of these neighborhoods and you can have 4 houses at intersections and all the kids go to different high schools. They don't even know their neighbors out here. Yeah. That was pretty eye-opening to me.
I tell you, when I was living in Anaheim, when I was coaching at Canyon in Anaheim Hills, I said, I'd be down at the Pop Warner deal. And so, where are your kids going? Well, they're going to go to Orange Lou, they're going to go to Marday, they're going to go to Servite. I'm like, why don't you stay at Canyon? And they're like, well, they're not any good. I'm like, well, if you all stay, we're pretty darn good,
Right.
And there was right after I'd left and moved to Arizona, there was a group of families in that Canyon Pop Warner, and they said, we're all going to stay together. They want a CIF title.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
And that's, I think, I live in San Clemente and coach at San Clemente. You see that with them. It's a one town, one team. It's a beautiful thing. I played at Norco High School, where you played in front. When you're on Friday nights, you're playing in front of your grandfather who might have played there, your brothers, your uncles, your cousins, and there's a lot of pride that goes with that. Bishop of Mott's very much the same, and I think that's some of what's missing a little bit from high school football right now.
And I totally agree. Well, Pat, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Trust me, everything you said tonight, it meant a lot, and I think you're doing a good job. If I had a son all over again, I would want you to coach him because I like your philosophy. Yeah. And I just want to say, fight on.
Fight on. I appreciate it. Take care. Hey, Neville, great seeing you, man.
Hey, bro, you too, brother. All right, we'll talk to you later. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that's another edition of In the Barber's Chair. Tune in next week, and we're going to talk about some referees, about refereeing games. It should be pretty interesting. Until then, we'll see you then. This is Neville, out.